This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I pontificate on the angriest man in the world as we discuss the 2009 documentary Winnebago Man. Welcome to the podcast. I'm PT.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you can join us, as always.
Yeah. Right before we went live, it always gives me the option of, do I want to limit the people who can watch this to people who are 18 plus. For a second, I don't know why, but I was like, maybe we should do that because there's lots of swearing in this documentary. But then I was like, well, first of all, that doesn't mean we're going to swear a lot because there's lots of swearing in the documentary. And then also, I don't think we should have to limit swearing to 18-year-olds. But anyway, that was my thought process. How are you, Jonathan?
I'm doing good. Glad to see you again this week.
Yes, indeed. Good to be back. Tell us about this documentary, Winnebago Man.
All right, Winnebago Man is.
I'm very interested to see how you synopsize this.
Yeah, so it's basically kind of an interactive documentary where the documentarian becomes obsessed with a viral video. He actually knew about it well before the age of YouTube and viral videos, back when it was on VHS, and eventually becomes very interested in the subject of this viral video, the actual person, and wants to track down the man himself to see what this meant to him in his life, if it was, just a silly thing he's never thought about since, if he is the man that he appeared to be in this short clip of outtakes of a very, very angry Winnebago Man salesman. And it kind of follows the journey to there and his interaction, and finds the man, the myth, and the legend, the Winnebago Man.
Indeed, yeah. Well, before we get to that, what did you like it or not?
I thought it was okay. It started off really liking it, and then just progressively liked it a little bit less. Probably peaked at about 30 minutes in for me, and then kind of trailed off.
Cool.
You?
Yeah, I liked it a lot, and I've actually seen it a few years ago, and I don't remember liking it that much. So I think maybe it was because I had kind of low expectations because of that, but I was very pleasantly, I liked it a lot. Very pleasantly surprised.
Cool.
I feel like it's this was made 6 years ago or whatever, and I feel like it's a thing now that whenever, I've almost learned to distance myself from the funny viral videos, because it seems like almost every time there's some kind of big viral video that I watch, I'm looking on dig.com or whatever, and a couple months later, and they're like, oh, remember that person in that funny video? They killed themselves. Or remember that person in that funny video? They are now bankrupt or whatever. Yeah, there's always some horrible story where it seems like this is a common internet reporter kind of thing. If you work for Gawker.com or something, it's a really great thing to track down the people behind these that are in these viral videos. And there's often a sad story that accompanies things. People usually aren't too happy that they were in these videos, and it just didn't turn out for them too well.
All right, well, that's interesting, because this is a little out of my world too, because I'm not a big viral video person. It's got to be a pretty extreme video for me to see it, and right. It has to make the nightly news. If it didn't make the nightly news, then I most likely have not seen that viral video.
You're kind of the Jack Rebney of our podcast. This is great.
A little bit.
I did I think this is in some ways more relevant than it was when it was made, just in that some of the things he was saying about these kids today, who's watching this, you you always hear people talking about YouTube videos and just Vine videos and Twitter videos and all kinds of stuff like that, who are people who are not into that kind of stuff. You're like, oh my God, what's wrong with these people? Why do they have all this time in their hands or whatever, there's just that generational disconnect. So it's interesting to see that in a documentary, I thought.
Yeah, no, that was cool, but he was extra disconnected.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There was a whole story behind Jack that that was one disappointment on the documentary was, so spoiler alert, they do that, they kind of, starts off searching for this guy, Jack Rebney, who is the Winnebago Man. And like I said, for the first, I think it's about 30 minutes into the documentary, actually tracks him down, which is much easier said than done with this guy. He really is off the grid. I mean, like, doesn't have a post office box. There's no like record of him, no credit, no anything. But then they never really dig into that, and you don't get to find out like his real backstory. So like, oh, somebody that's that far off the grid, there's some kind of story or reason behind it, and you never really find out the personal story of Jack Rebney. You just,
Right.
you know.
No, that's true. That yeah. Well, before we get into that, one thing that I didn't remember, I was completely surprised about, was like how old this is. That, and they talked about, in the documentary, about how, in the pre-YouTube days, people would actually just copy this on VHS tapes and pass it around to their friends. Which, let me ask you this, Jonathan, because I feel like we should have been part of that generation. Like we were in college in the VHS days. I don't remember any like passing around VHS of weird clips scene.
No, I was totally unaware of it, and like, I mean, we would pass around VHS tapes, but it was like people would have. I had one friend at college that had literally like 200-300 movies that were all, he had 2 VCRs, and he would get them from
Right.
video, when you rented them from Blockbuster, and then he'd record them. And so, I mean, we were very much VHS savvy, and we even like, at the time it was a little more difficult, like, but would record cool stuff off VH1 and MTV and all that stuff, and put together video compilations, music videos, and actually played those on those channels. But no, I never had any underground viral videos.
Yeah, I guess we weren't cool enough to be involved in that scene.
No, guess not.
But yeah, that was interesting to me. So the clip, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you can. I should look for what it's actually called. Probably just like the angriest RV salesman in the world or something.
I typed in Winnebago Man and it popped up.
Okay, cool. So basically, it was just a trade video basically for Winnebago, and it seemed like they didn't really like. I don't think they ever really explain it fully, but it seemed like it was like the kind of thing that went out to dealerships and like to
right. It was an industrial video. They keep saying that, so I'm sure that's exactly what it did. Was you sent it out to all the RV sales people out there, so they would buy Winnebago RVs. But.
Right. So Jack Rebney was the star and everything of that video, the host of that video, and basically it's just a bunch of outtakes of him getting super pissed off and swearing and yelling, just stuff like that, in rather humorous ways. And I was surprised too when they had all like the little Hollywood references to the clip too. That part was kind of funny.
Yeah, that was totally funny.
The different like little movies and stuff like that have quoted it.
Yeah, because I never saw it before this documentary. Like, I never was even on YouTube or anything. I never saw the viral video of the Angriest Man or Winnebago Man or whatever. It is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about swearing in a humorous way. Like, swearing isn't funny, but like some of the stuff the guy says and the way he says it is pretty darn funny.
Right. Yeah, he's a good swearer.
He is.
All right, so they find him, and here's the weirdest part of it to me, and the part where I was like, I don't know if they like explain this very well, or if they were like, what the real deal is that's going on here. So give me your take. Which the whole thing. So he goes and visits Jack Rebney the first time, and he's like super sweet,
wait.
nice.
I want to rewind it for 1 second, just because there's one point I want to touch on before they find him.
Okay.
So when he's doing the search for him, the one thing that they did have on that original VHS recording was the names of the people that edited the tape, basically like a credits at the end.
Right.
So he was able to search back and find the people that actually worked on the film, on that industrial video. And when he finds them and he's talking to those guys, they're like, yeah, we put that together so we would get fired. I was like, oh my gosh, what a bunch of dicks. I mean, yeah. I guess, yeah, he was pretty mean or vulgar and stuff like that on the video. He was probably a bear to work with, but I still thought that was like pretty raw deal, and it worked. It was successful. It sounded like that.
Yeah.
They all made a copy of that outtakes reel for themselves, and they sent one outtake reel to Winnebago so they would see what a jerk this guy was, and it did work, and he did get fired. And then that's so interesting that I would assume there was probably 8 or 10 tapes made off the get-go, and then that cycled through apparently an underground subculture of people watching VHS.
Crazy. Yeah, I totally forgot about those guys.
Yeah, they were just one where I was like, oh, that was just like such a sad little note that, like, I always think of things like documentaries like this, and especially with like a subject like Jack, where he's pretty sensitive and he obviously has a temper, and like, he's obviously going to watch the documentary when it's done. And that would totally suck when you saw that part where you're like, oh, I didn't realize it. Or maybe he did, like when it happened, maybe Winnebago was like, you're fired because of.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So he goes and sees the Jack. He finds Jack and he meets with Jack the first time, and Jack is basically like super pleasant and nice and everything like that. And then he leaves, and like then he just starts getting contacted by him a couple months later, a few months later, and Jack's like, I don't believe that stuff I said before. That was all a lie. Like that was just weird. What do you think of that whole thing?
Dude, I think Jack is crazy. I think he is a nut job. Like, I mean, and you know what? There's like, especially like how old was he? Was he 76 when this was filmed, or was he older than
Yeah, I
that?
think he was somewhere in that range.
Okay. I mean, not that that's like incredibly old, but there is something about somebody that's old like that once you hit like a certain age, and especially then he like all he really wanted to talk about after you find out that weird pleasant thing where like came, yeah, which didn't make any sense. That like one, he would even want to meet with this documentary guy. Two, he meets with them, and then he gives this like total false interview just to clear his name, which apparently shouldn't have been cleared because he really was that angry. And then after that, he just like turns out that he really wants to like use this documentary to like basically like shout out his political beliefs, which are, you know, pretty nutty. I mean, they didn't dive too far
Yeah,
into
we
them.
didn't get much of it. We just got that he doesn't like Dick Cheney, and I feel like that well goes very deep, but we didn't.
Yeah, I
Didn't
have
go
a
that
feeling because he was writing a book about that, and it
Right.
was like, and that, you know, like even, you know, I mean, even my parents who, you know, at least they have some interaction with like other people, and you know, we come over and see them all the time and kind of keep them grounded.
Mhm.
But they watch a crap load of Fox News, and like every once in a while they'll say something, and I'm just like, do you hear the words coming out of your mouth? I mean, like the statement you just made is literally insane. And like I'll like call them on it and be like, oh, you've just like gone off the deep end on that. And they'll be like, no, but there's that happened. There's a video of it. Or they'll like throw out some like crazy thing. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna back up and like we're gonna hold on to reality for a second and go over it. And I think that like really helps, like, you know, that interaction with people. But if it wasn't for that, like, because they don't really have like a social structure outside of the family,
Right.
you know, so like without that, I think they would really, really go down that road. And I think Jack has done that. You know, he's just off in the woods by himself, watching Fox News, getting obsessed with politics, which I obviously have nothing to do with him. You know what I mean? Like if you're a dude living out in the woods, like fishing and taking care of cabins, who gives a crap what the current political state is in the country? Obviously, this guy doesn't even have a post, or, you know, a mailbox or a credit card. Nothing that any legislation is going to do is going to have any effect on this guy. So I don't think he should be so hyper, like, you know,
Right.
pissed off and involved about it.
Right. Well, that's the funny part. He's like his whole message is people got to wake up and realize what's happening and do something about it. But like he's literally doing nothing about it. I guess he's writing a book, but
Yeah, he's writing books.
he's just like he could certainly become involved in the political system if he so chose.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great point I bring up with my parents all the time. It's like if they start getting on like a crazy political high horse, I'm like, well, you should totally like go lobby. You know, you guys are retired, you got means.
Right.
Go to Washington, go talk to a senator or something. Write a letter.
Sure.
Make some kind of action committee. Do whatever you want. And they're like, what? I'm not gonna do that. I'm like, okay, let it go then.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see the. All right. Here's the possible two theories of Jack. And I guess they're not necessarily, they could both be true. But one is just a crazy guy. But I think part of it could be that the part of his history that we do get is that he used to be a news reporter, and I feel like maybe he once was a guy who really wanted to make a difference, and basically didn't work out, you know, for him at all. He, you know, kind of slowly dripped down the ladder, was working on industrial films, obviously got fired from that. And, you know, who knows what would happen between them and now, but it probably wasn't the life he chose for himself. And then I think it probably was like what he found out about the video, like kind of upset about it, being like, man, this is going to be my legacy that I leave. Like I wanted to do all these great things, and now I'm old, and this is my legacy. And so, the first time he came out to interview him, he was trying to, like you say, clear his name a little bit. But then, I don't know, something happened between then and the second time where he was like, man, this is my last chance to get my message out. I got to embrace it. And then from that point on, I think he was definitely playing up the whole being angry thing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think maybe you're right, but I think the other indicator for me that he's kind of a nutty guy is that so the documentary guy goes, interviews him, he gives this false interview. Then he lets it lay. Like the documentarian is basically like, Ben, he's just like, I'm done, whatever, all that. I guess that was a total waste. It's just like a little tiny cliff note in this guy's life. All of a sudden then unsolicited phone calls start coming where he's like, yeah, Ben starts calling me a lot.
Right.
This is a guy I met one time that he used to kind of clear his name. And then all of a sudden he's sending him manuscripts and he's calling him a lot. And I bet you anything was on the verge of stalking.
Right.
And that's weird. I mean, like if you do that to somebody that you meet one time, you are probably a weird hermit dude in the woods, which I think is where Jack was at the point in his life.
Yeah. I mean, I could see a little bit just that he was like, he wants to like he completely obviously doesn't understand the YouTube generation. Like if he saw us on, at least prior to this, if he saw us doing this podcast, he'd be like, holy crap, those guys must be important. They're on, they're recording a thing. They're talking like he comes from the world of like, there's 3 networks. And if you're on one of them, geez, you're kind of a big deal. So when the guy shows up with a camera and is like, hey man, I'm a documentary filmmaker, he probably takes that a lot more seriously than like we would if we were like, all right, it's just some idiot kid with a camera.
Sure, right.
Probably thinks the guy's a big deal or whatever. But yeah, I mean, he definitely goes over the line. I'm not saying he doesn't. Yeah, and then yeah, basically then he goes back out and keeps interviewing him, and he basically, yeah, like you said, refuses to tell anything about his past, or he doesn't want to talk about anything but politics, basically. And he's just really weird about the whole thing. He's like happy to obviously wants them to be there, but that he's constantly yelling at them and telling them to get the F out of there and stuff like that.
Yeah, because almost any time they ask him a question, he'd be like, all right, well, so what have you been up to for the last 20 years or whatever? And he'd be like, hey, I don't need you. You can leave anytime. You can get out of here. Yeah. And it was just like,
I see what you're trying to do. Oh, you not mess with me like that.
Right. I was like, wow, this is a crazy person. I mean, it's really like on the verge of dementia or losing it or whatever. I don't know, but it's certainly one reaction could have been like, I'd rather not talk about the past, but I do have this subject. But thanks for coming up on my invitation.
To my remote, isolated cabin.
Yeah. So yeah, crazy person. But he was still funny. I still liked him. He was
right. Yeah, I couldn't figure out how much of that was like sincere, and how much of that was just him kind of playing up the persona or whatever. I don't know.
Right, the profanity and all that stuff.
Right, and just getting so ticked off about everything.
I don't know. Yeah, it had to be. Again, it's so hard to judge crazy because I thought about that later. Like, if he was really as angry and swore so much and was so angry, the first interview, which was a long interview, it wasn't like he was there for 20 minutes. The first time he goes and shows up for quite some time, and he's like, yeah. Jack really liked being on camera. He kept having me film more and more of them, and he kept wanting to have all these conversations on camera. But he's there for a long time, and the whole time he's really pleasant, has his anger completely under control, and is, just talks about how nice everybody at Winnebago was, and what a great life he has up in the mountains. And I don't know. I think if you were really that angry and pissed off and swore that much, you'd have a harder time keeping it together for the first round.
Right.
Maybe not.
Yeah. So one thing I did like is I liked how he had that friend who he called a lot, and apparently the friend was at one point on the verge of being homeless, and he took him in, and they've kind of been lifelong friends. since then. So at least he can maintain a friendship over the years. That was good, and that guy was pretty
Yeah,
nice.
that was good. Yeah, he seemed all right. So that was cool too. Again, I give Ben a lot of credit because he really did do. Like a lot of people have tried to find this guy over the years, and no one had been able to. And he was, again, to go with the crazy thing. It's like, how can you be that off grid? I mean, that guy was really, really off grid. Where, there's no way to find him essentially. I mean, he
Yeah,
did eventually find a whole bunch of PO boxes and just literally hand wrote a letter to all of them.
right. Yeah, Dick
But
Cheney is still looking for him right now.
that's it.
Um, so then, so like through part of the documentary, then he has some eye problems, and I don't know. They never said like if he was completely blind, did they? But he seemed to be pretty blind.
Pretty blind. I think, well, they said it was glaucoma, so I assume there was at least some blurry images. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like an inner eye problem. So he probably had some sort of sensation of light. But yeah, certainly it appeared very little.
Yeah. And that did not mellow him out very much at all.
No. No, it was cute too because there was a police report about hello, PT. PT, there you are.
Hey,
Hey.
Google said this call has ended, and then I was gone. I was like, oh, what happened there?
Yeah, I got that message too. I was like, whoa.
Wonder if Jonathan's still going. Yeah, geez, I feel like we should do an angry tirade now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wait, I don't want to curse out Google because I'll just end the call again. I don't like that.
That will not help our situation. One bit. So one thing, I guess we'll get into the kind of spoiling the end of the movie. So I guess if you don't want to know, don't listen to this part. But skip forward 5 minutes. But I really like the whole final part where they take him to. They have a little like found footage film festival where they show his clip in front of an audience and have him come do a Q&A. And that part was nice. It's nice to.
The part was nice.
You got to see the reaction of the people, and yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's the kind of guy that he did really appreciate the fact that he had fans out there. Essentially, people came up to him and again, because he was, he kept saying like prior to that little film festival thing, like, what kind of idiots are going to be in the audience that watch this stupid thing on YouTube, and a bunch of morons. And then at the end, he's like, oh, well, they were really good people, and they're basically like smart, intelligent people.
It basically took them laughing at his jokes for him to turn him around on that. He was like, "Oh, these people are clever.
They can follow me."
Jokes. Yeah, but like my own little inner narrative of him, and like my picture of him in my head, that he's the guy who's like never achieved this success he wants to, and now there's this thing out there that he's going to be remembered for, that he has negative feelings around. And I feel like he kind of turned it around there, and he felt like, you know what, I'm bringing people joy, and that's cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that the filmmaker was also very kind to him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, so obviously he could have taken it in so many different ways, and I'm sure he had footage of so many different things, like phone calls with him, all like his tirades on the modern American political system and whatever else, the downfall of America. He obviously had a lot of footage about that stuff. They went and filmed in various locations about it, and he never really included any of it. And like, he when a lot of times he's like, you gotta tone down the rhetoric. And even after the all the people were talking after that film festival about Jack, and like one mentioned like, yeah, his political views were pretty strong, but they never show Jack talk about like politics in the U.S. or anything like that. They don't show any footage of it. They cut all that.
Right.
All the stuff that would have made him look really bad, they cut all that out. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was nice that they did that and did it for him. That in the end they didn't.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was surprised. I went on Internet Movie Database and I was looking at the message board. Man, the message board people were like, the kind of the universal consensus mostly was that man, this filmmaker like was a real jerk to Jack and was like totally exploiting him, and he didn't even like let him say what he wanted to say. Kept trying to get him to talk about his family, which clearly didn't want to talk about, and all this stuff. I was like, man, I don't feel that way at all.
Yeah, no, I think that guy protected Jack in a big way, because he probably would have had a more successful documentary if he would have like just been like, and guess what? He was the angriest man in the world. Blah. Here, look at him talk crazy. Look at him do all this nonsense.
Right.
And he really could have exploited him in that way, but in the end, he showed the clips that made him look better and made him look less crazy. And he showed like the title of his book, but he didn't go through and be like, check out this line. This part doesn't make any sense, and it's blah blah. And he didn't like. He alluded to the fact that, he was like, yeah, and then all of a sudden all these phone calls started coming from Jack, and then manuscripts and a bunch of other stuff. But he could have been like, yeah, all of a sudden I had a stalker, he could have really portrayed it in that light.
Yeah,
and it probably would have all made for more entertainment. He probably would have had more people watch his film.
Right. I guess too that Jack has seen the documentary and liked it and everything like that. So that's good.
Oh, good. That's good.
According to Internet Movie Database, anyway. Well, one other moment that I liked was when he was like talking to the homeless guy who was like just like the exact, I don't know if he's homeless or not for sure, but the guy who was like basically the exact brand of crazy as him. They're like both that kind of crazy, this like pretty like verbose vocabulary, using big words left and right, and but spouting some nonsense once you get past the big words. That was a good time.
Yeah. And it was totally funny because they were both trying to like follow each other's crazy, and they're like, "Okay, I think I get you. I think I get you." It was awesome.
Good time. So I feel like of all the people I've seen tracked down for their viral videos, this is the happiest situation.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah. That was actually kind of like a crazy thing to me too, because I've never really looked into anyone getting tracked down for a viral video. But then like they did the Star Wars one where it kicked it off, and that was kind of sad. It was really sad. And although I thought there was some great edits on it. Like when they threw like for anybody that hasn't seen the documentary, like there's one part where they kind of go over like viral videos, the sensation of it, the negative impact that it can have on the subject of the video, and the one they kind of use as their example is this guy that did like a high schooler who was, I'm guessing, kind of a dorky kid to begin with. He certainly, he was a little overweight, and he moved in a clumsy manner, but he took like a golf club, like a golf ball retriever thing, and used it like a lightsaber, like a dual-sided lightsaber, and filmed himself on VHS, and at his high school, just in private, essentially. No one else knew about it anyway. And he's swinging his golf club lightsaber around, and he's really getting into it. And people find the video and they post it on YouTube when YouTube becomes a thing. And he eventually is distraught over it. It becomes a viral video and is institutionalized. And there's a lawsuit, and cyberbullying becomes a thing over all that. So,
yeah. That was a bummer.
So that was a bummer.
I'd be willing to wager that anyone who's able to find this podcast and is viewing or listening to it has seen that video.
Okay, sorry. Probably didn't need to explain that.
Yeah. So how many stars are you going to give this man, this Winnebago Man?
I'll give it I'll give it 3 stars.
All right, good deal. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I like it a lot.
There we go.
So there you go. That is Winnebago Man. Check it out on Netflix today or tomorrow. What you got any choices for us for next week, John?
I do. I'm actually prepared this week. So
right. Well, I'm gonna close my eyes and prepare it mentally.
You got it mentally prepared. There's a chance you've seen all of these because these are all documentaries, and I'm like, you know what? Documentaries that I think I probably should have watched prior to now. So that was kind of my thing.
I like the theme.
Yeah. So one is and I'm kind of going newest to oldest.
Okay.
One is terms and conditions may apply, which basically examines laws of privacy in the digital age between Facebook and Google and blah, blah, blah. You've probably seen it. And anyhow, next one is Enron, Smartest Guys in the Room. Obviously, I'm a little late to the game to watch that documentary, but about the fall of Enron for all you old people out there that remember that story. And but it basically takes a behind the scenes look at the collapse of the business and the impact that it had on the corporate sector. And this one, I'm definitely way late to the game, is The Endless Summer.
Oh,
it's a little movie about surfing that I've never actually seen in its entirety.
Oh man, whew, this is gonna be tough. So I've only seen Endless Summer of those.
Okay.
Terms and conditions, man. There's been so many times my fingers like hovering over the.
Me too.
Watch it. But this, I kind of don't want to because it's one of those things where it's like I'm sure it's gonna like freak me out, but like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna stop using YouTube and stuff like that.
Right. I'd kind of like to see it because like my gut reaction to it is that it won't bother me at all. Like you know what I mean? Like if someone's compiling like a massive database of 1 billion people worldwide, so they can track general statistical movements, but that somehow theoretically infringes on my privacy. I'm like, well, nobody's really gives a crap about me. They're just trying to come up with statistical data, and it doesn't bother me. But anyway, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it goes deeper than that, and it should bother me.
Yeah, I saw this. The one thing I saw that was like along those lines that bothered me is I saw an episode of Morgan Spurlock's show where he's like I can't remember the deal, but he has like someone come in and apply for a job with him, and he's like, all right, for the next 24 hours, just to let you know, you have to sign this thing that says I can find any data on you that I want or whatever. And so he signs it, and then he hires like this data expert to basically track that guy's exact movements. Like they know precisely where he is every moment for the next 24 hours using just like all kinds of crazy data stuff. I was like, holy cow, that's pretty intense.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm interested. Enron, I'm trying to remember the Smartest Guys in the Room. I know that we watched another documentary that was made by those same people, and I liked it, but I can't remember which one it was. And Endless Summer, boy, I don't know if I'm ready for that level of intensity. I think I would go with Enron for now. Let's
okay.
Smartest guys in the room.
All right, that would not have been my guess as to your pick for that. Right. But all right, rock on, Enron it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in all this. Sure. All right, for my segment this week where I recommend a podcast or YouTube channel related to what we saw, I'm going to recommend Mystery Show, which is a podcast where the host, it's a very heavily produced like NPR style podcast where the host solves mysteries that can't be solved online. So she takes like people will give her mysteries. Like one really good example was there's this person who wrote a book that was like super small book, hardly sold any copies. And there was a picture in People magazine of Britney Spears holding that book. And the author wanted to know, how did Britney Spears get a hold of this book, and did she read it, and what did she think of it? So that's like one of the mysteries that she has to solve is those kind of things, like things that you can't just like figure out. You have to like really go and get into it. And she has like another one was someone when they were a kid found this crazy belt buckle that had like bacon and eggs, and had like this little toaster that when you push this button on it, the toast popped up. And they still had the belt buckle, and they just found it in a gutter, and I always wondered what the story was behind it. So she had to like figure out what the story behind that belt buckle is. And it's a pretty crazy show. I highly recommend it. It's good stuff. So that's Mystery Show. That's my recommendation.
So Mystery Show. All right, and it's a podcast, you said, right?
Yes.
All right, I have to check it out.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you for watching. We will be back next time. Until then, this is PT. Keep it real.
And this Jonathan. We'll see you next week.